morning and welcome to Frank's School. Yesterday I put on a video with no words at all. I called it 134, the first of two. And I called it, I don't know, Flooding the Impossible Garden or something like that. No talking. In a sense, that was a preview of what it is, or with Marion. He doesn't explain things. You just have to look at it and figure out from what you're seeing what he's thinking. But I'm going to talk now. So you might say this is now a way of just talking about what Marion had done. Flooding the Impossible Garden, I'm calling it that. I actually went out in the first place because the world was pretty. It had snowed, there was ice forming where water was running. But then I thought, I'll use it as a way to teach something. The term water meadows is not at all well known, but I had run into it. And I don't know if it was the first time I ever thought of it, but some friends of mine, Kathy and Scott McGee, in 1974, gave me a book, which I have here, called Farm Tools. I was already on the farm by that time, and they thought I would like it. I don't know if you can see it at a distance. But anyway, in it, there's a section here, a short section, called Meadow Watering. I'll get close and hold it still. Maybe you can see that. I don't know. Anyway, there it described how in England, in parts of England, they would flood their meadows in the wintertime and then drain the water off in the spring. And it explained how they did it. They would turn the water on, turn the water off. Well, I have tried that before. I think, though, that for that to be most effective, it has to be in land that is heavy in lime. I'm pretty sure, to work like it does in England. But there's still uses for it here for me too. I use it mostly at the moment in the Impossible Garden because it softens the ground and gives me level so I can work at it to get it the let me call them terraces perfectly level, so later on when it gets dry then I can water again if there's water, for irrigation in other words. Irrigation and drainage, they go right together. Well, that was Farm Tools by Michael Partridge, 1973. Later, my mother and father had traveled to England, and they gave me a book here called Fields, Hedges, and Ditches. It's a Shire album, and she wrote a little note in there. She always would keep a date. That's where my mother was. And she wrote a note, actually, on the front, see page 19, and she addressed it to the drowner. Well, on page 19, once again, I'm not too sure you're going to be able to see this, but there's a man there who is working a water meadow, and the nickname for such people were drowners, because I guess they drowned little critters that would be in there, or they cover the meadow with water. It's evidence that I was still getting input and support for so much of what I was doing from my mother, an extremely influential person in why I do what I do. Although ultimately she did not really completely understand where I was going. Well, now eventually I found Most Approved Water Works by Rowland Vaughan. Venerable Vaughan, his nickname. He's the guy who basically invented water meadows. And I got a copy of his book. Look at this. 1610 in London. That's very old. And here's a copy of his book, and he explains the technique that he had found about covering meadows with water, and in some detail, although the writing back in 1610, is pretty strange. And eventually I also found a book called Water and Grass by Water and Grass by E.H. Carrier. I think I just found that by looking in the subject volume of books in print. Now you could probably search it online and find something like that. 1933, and there's a whole chapter devoted in here to irrigating pastures in southern Europe. Fascinating book, really, and that's where I think I ran into the word bysses. Either that or else in travel in a travel guide to Switzerland. I'm not sure, but this has got my attention. Now, this is a whole other subject, and I devoted a lot of time to this subject in a playlist called Water Love, which I think that was the name of the playlist, and I'll put it on here as a link underneath this. But that might give a little explanation to what you saw yesterday. As the spring goes on, I'm using it to try to tame untamed, I don't know what to call it. It's not really pasture, it's not really quite swamp, it's just undrained area that has to do with the disruption of surface mining that was done here after toward the demise of the village that was out there. Well, that's kind of a long story. All right, bye for now.